7 days ago, about 6 to 7 days ago, INEC told us that they will be postponing this election. And everybody was upset. Many people were confused, especially people who had gone to bed before that happened. And over the last few days, INEC has taken the time to communicate their plans after that postponement. Every day they were communicating with the country. As a communication expert, Mr. Ikemeside, I would like you to tell us, how would you appraise the communication strategy over the last few days of INEC in creating the mood that we now have today?
Thank you once again for having me. I would say it's been better than what has been going on and than what INEC has been saying over the past few months. I think a lot of the angst and frustration that Nigerians felt last time out when the elections were essentially postponed a couple of hours to the opening of the polls was informed by the fact that INEC consistently issued reassurances to the effect that it was ready to shepherd and conduct these elections, as it were. So what has happened, what has been different, right, over the last couple of days is that INEC has been more specific in its messaging, and I think that's key from a communications perspective. And so instead of issuing blanket reassurances that we are ready, we are going to do this, all of the measures that need to have been taken, INEC has been more specific. And especially with respect to transparency around the actual number of Nigerians who are not only legally permitted to vote, but those who have the capacity to vote by virtue of their PVC collections. And so online, a lot of people had actually been calling for INEC to release specific details as to what the actual PVC collection rates across the country have been. That happened this week, right? And so that was a major win from INEC's perspective. Now, if all of this had happened prior to the elections, and if there was any inkling that for logistical reasons and all of the reasons that was officially given or provided as the reason why the elections were postponed, if INEC had come out earlier to state all of those things, there would have still been a negative backlash, as it were, because lots of people were planning towards that date. But it would have been a lot more understandable. A postponement that happens a couple of weeks ahead of time is different from a postponement that happens 4 hours to the opening of polling day. And so what INEC has done differently is that they've been more specific in their messaging. There had been news making the rounds, especially on social media and on OTT platforms like WhatsApp, for example, around what the specific modalities on election day in terms of how you are to conduct yourself, how you are to imprint your fingerprints on the ballot paper, for example, had been going around, and INEC came out specifically to address those concerns. And so what has happened is INEC has actually seen the way a lot of Nigerians are engaging with the election process in the build-up to election day, and they have tailored their messaging towards those specific engagement policies. And it's a lot better to be more specific and more upfront about what you're going to do or what people are empowered to do than to just issue blanket statements, because when there is a black hole in messaging and in communications, people will fill that black hole up. So INEC has done a better job than it had in the past in terms of messaging, and the fact that they were able to pull this off in a couple of days begs the question as to why some folks over there thought it was rocket science to do this from the get-go, but we'll just leave that for the time being.
All right, thank you very much. Allow me to go back to Abuja. Dr. Sam Amadi, I know you've been listening in on the conversation so far. INEC decided that they were going to be telling Nigerians, they were going to be having a daily briefing, and they started that since Monday, I think. And they communicated, and they allowed people to ask questions unbridled. Do you think that communication, anything could have been better with the communication strategy since the election was last postponed? Dr. Sam Amadi.
I think INEC has been much more effective, not just in communication.
Yes, Dr. Sam Amadi, can you hear me?
All aspects of this election.
All right.
I think we'll get back to you, Dr. Sam Amadi. I was just coming back to what you said earlier on about the communication strategy. Like you rightly said, for about a week, we had press briefings and all of that, telling people, this is what happened, that is what happened. But going forward, I mean, in future elections, we can always fall back to this kind of should I say, strategy. But in order to avoid this kind of delay, if I may put it that way, I mean, what do you think INEC really should be doing? Yes. So I think it's something that INEC really needs to think seriously about before we get down to examining what exactly they can do. I think now that we have gone through a third election cycle where there has been a postponement of some sort, I think it would be front and center on the minds, or I would imagine that it would be front and center on the minds of the folks who organize our elections, to appropriately sit down and distill what are the potential pain points in the electoral management process that can be taken care of beforehand. A lot of the criticism that, the electoral body came in for in the light of the postponement had to do with the fact that a lot of the things that they said were not taken care of in time to make last week's election possible did not actually come into play. And so from things like communications and messaging, better voter education happens ahead of time. The logistics around PVC.
We'll be hearing from our correspondents all over the country the mood. What's the mood like all over the country as Nigerians go to the polls tomorrow? Next, I would like to hear from our correspondent who is in Bayelsa State, and she's gone to the streets in Bayelsa to tell us what the mood is like in Bayelsa State. Dubra, if you can hear me, I know that you went out much earlier in the day, and we want to know what happened. You talked about Brass, local government, because it's a riverine area and it's a special area in terms of deployment of logistics. Can you give us an update on Brass and what the mood is like there in Bayelsa State?
Hello, Kayode. I can confirm to you that the materials for Brass local government area, now that's a riverine area in Bayelsa State, has been sent to Brass. Now what's just remaining, and just a little bit, according to the staff of INEC, is that materials, sensitive materials for Yenagua local government area. Now Yenagua is the state capital of Bayelsa State. Sensitive materials for Yenagua are now being dispatched to the different rack centers. Now I earlier told you that refresher course for adult staff is supposed to take place this evening. That is yet to have started. As the resident electoral commissioner said, they want to ensure that all sensitive materials have gotten to all the racks before they commence the refresher course for the ad hoc staff. Now, earlier on in the day, there was this light shower in Bayelsa State, and everybody felt, okay, it might be a rainy election eve. But it stopped. Maybe it's a blessing, but I can assure you that Bayelsans are eager to vote. We went to the jetties, the waterside motor parks, and we saw that there was this mass movement of people. Everybody that registered outside Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital, were eager to go and exercise their franchise. Because of the no movements and close of shops that would be selling groceries and all that, people are doing last-minute shopping, getting things they need to. After voting, they can either watch, see how the voting plays out, or go back home, stay in the comfort of their house and not come out to buy anything because most shops will be closed. Also in Bayelsa State, for those of the people who've spoken with, they are very, very anxious. They believe first the elections would not be postponed. They believe that INEC has their A game on, so they are not anticipating any postponement of the elections, and they believe tomorrow we're going to have a credible, free and fair elections. Most residents we spoke to expressed optimism that the election tomorrow will be very, very peaceful. They have been assured over and over again by the police commissioner in Bayelsa State and the resident electoral commissioner of INEC that everything has been put in place to ensure that Bayelsans experience a violence-free election, and they are banking on those words. From Yenagoa, Deborah Timiwood, Channels Television News.
You can see that, well, that's Dobra Timiwood, Channels TV correspondent there in Bayelsa State. And you can see that she's excited. That also shows that she possibly hasn't seen anything of concern. I mean, she's even doing that piece to camera as though she was covering some kind of entertainment event. I mean, it cascades down when things are going right. She's moved around that state, and apparently she's not seeing anything of note in terms of what she needs to be concerned about. And you can see the mood appears all right.
Exactly.
All right there.
That just goes to show, the level of patience, many Nigerians have for this election. I mean, people just want to go out there and do, perform their civic responsibilities. It doesn't matter whatever challenges or obstacles. When it's D-Day, they want to go out there and just do it. And, of course, the optimism will be high. The level of optimism will be very high. And it's a great one for the people of Bayelsa State.